In our last segment, we discussed a little bit about the invisible minority myth and the idea that Jews have perceived power, they don't need help from other people, and the unconscious or subconscious biases that some people have against Jewish people or in Jewish stereotypes. This kind of leads us to our next issue of accidental racism, or ways that people don't intend on saying something that is anti-Semitic, but oftentimes it comes out as that. The putting of Jewish people on a pedestal and suggesting that maybe the issue of anti-Semitism really doesn't affect modern-day Jewish people all that much does allow this issue that's been rising of using Jewish tragedy as some type of political gain. Nothing has made this more obvious than the worldwide pandemic, but especially the reaction that some people had to things like vaccine mandates and vaccinations and lockdowns. We have never seen before such an outcry against these things using Jewish and anti-Semitic imagery. The most notable, of course, is the putting on of a Jewish star, or the use of the Jewish star that was made infamous through Nazi propaganda and Nazi persecution of Jews, having to wear a star to identify yourself as a Jewish person. These being used as forms of political protest and speaking out against vaccines and vaccine mandates. It wouldn't be such a big deal, of course, if they didn't use a Jewish star and just had some type of other symbol to suggest they were anti-vaccination. That's their choice. It's freedom of speech. The issue, of course, is when it crosses into purposeful use of a Jewish symbol, one of terror and horror and death and murder, without even a second thought. You see these people wearing them and they are quite content and quite happy to make the similarity between Nazi Germany and vaccine mandates without even questioning where that might come from. We see normal people, everyday average people in America and in Europe, wearing these stars without questioning the symbolism and the hurt that it may cause people. For the most part, these are very intelligent people who probably would know better if it wasn't such an invisible issue that people assume that it's no big deal to wear this star. The Jewish tragedy is sort of free for everyone to use across the world as some type of political symbol, rather than the actual event that it was and the tragedy and pain that it still causes Jewish communities today. We see people all the way up to figures within the U.S. government wearing these stars and speaking out. And the most difficult part, of course, is when the Jewish community tries to speak out and suggests that this would be a wrong comparison and please do not downplay our tragedies of the past. These people will double and triple down and suggest this is a formal protest. I am totally allowed to use these symbols to protest something that has really nothing to do with the history of the Holocaust. I am really left wondering if this would fly for any other historical event. We don't find people comparing, tragedies and issues from Stalin's Russia or any of these other issues. But for some reason, the Jewish issues are a free-for-all for anyone to use as fodder for politics. I really do believe that this is because, for some reason, as Jewish people, our tragedies are seen as the past, as invisible, as in the Jews have enough power these days. They're not under any kind of oppression or challenges due to racism. So we can sort of take these issues of the past and use them because it's sort of something out of a book. It's not really something that they face on a regular basis today. Obviously, this is only one example of the use of Jewish imagery and anti-Semitic imagery for the use of politics, but it is very telling, the fact that the world doesn't really speak up for the Jewish people. And when the Jewish people try and speak up and suggest that this is a little bit of a crossing of a line when it comes to using our tragedies for political gain or for getting your message out, that it is inappropriate, we find that no one will really stand with us. It's us on our own, trying desperately to educate the world and prove that we are here and we should be visible and our tragedies should not be made fun of or made light of or even used in inappropriate ways. It really is hard to tell the motivations of someone who does this. I would like to think, and I would suggest, that most people are just sort of ignorant and blind to the history of some of these symbols because the Jewish tragedy tends to be somewhat invisible to people who aren't Jewish, that it is just easy for them to grasp onto these symbols as something they've seen or heard of and not put it in context or understand how that might feel to other people around them. This is why I'd like to consider it as quote-unquote accidental racism, because I really don't think that many people really understand what these symbols mean and how they affect other people, but are more thinking a little bit selfishly about the message that they want to show and for the idea that they want to put forward. I love that the Jewish community tends to come out and try and educate as many people as they can. Certain people from the government will get a trip to the Holocaust Museum to understand the background and significance of that symbol or those symbols and those metaphors that they use. And sometimes it works, and sometimes they come back and continue their rhetoric for the attention that they get. But it is incumbent on us to try our very best to make sure that these symbols and these histories that are ours are not hijacked for political reasons, and we try and make ourselves, our issues, and our concerns visible to people once again so these things can stop happening. When we come back, we're going to talk about Khloe Kardashian and her unfortunate post on social media. This is the Jewish Diaspora Report. We'll be back in a second.